The year 2026 began not with celebration, but with Europe bracing against relentless winter storms. Instead of fireworks and festivities, the continent was shrouded in a deep, biting cold, as powerful winds swept across cities and rural landscapes alike. People bundled up, struggling through snowdrifts and icy streets, as the first of many storms battered the region. Rivers became torrents, streets turned to canals, and daily life was drowned by the constant rush of floodwater. In city after city, familiar roads disappeared beneath swirling currents, and neighborhoods were transformed into islands. The relentless rain and melting snow combined, pushing rivers far beyond their banks and leaving entire communities stranded. This wasn't a single event, but a sustained assault, storm after storm, with no time for recovery. Each new system arrived before the last had faded, compounding the devastation. The skies seemed locked in a cycle of fury, offering no respite, as battered towns faced wave after wave of destruction. The ground, saturated beyond its limits, could absorb no more. Every new downpour simply ran off, overwhelming defenses. Fields that once produced food now lay underwater, and ancient riverbanks crumbled under the pressure. Flood barriers, built for storms of the past, proved no match for the relentless onslaught. Emergency services were stretched thin, the economic toll soared, and families fled with only what they could carry. Volunteers joined first responders, working around the clock to rescue those trapped by rising waters. For many, the only option was to abandon their homes, unsure if they would ever return. As meteorologists tracked the next storm, Marta, gathering over the Atlantic, the continent faced a sobering question. Was this the new normal? Scientists warned that climate patterns were shifting, making extreme weather more frequent and severe. The sense of uncertainty grew with every new forecast. The true cost is measured not just in damage, but in the uncertainty of what comes next. As communities began to pick up the pieces, the fear lingered. Would the next storm be even worse, and how could they possibly prepare for a future so unpredictable? Two storms, Kristin and Leonardo, brought devastation to the Iberian Peninsula. Kristin saturated the land, setting the stage for disaster. Then Leonardo struck, unleashing historic rainfall and catastrophic flooding. In Portugal, a man was swept away in his car. In Spain, a woman disappeared trying to save her dog. Roads vanished, bridges failed, and thousands were evacuated as entire communities were cut off. The storms left behind chaos and despair, with little time to recover before the next threat. Each storm arrived before the last had passed, compounding the destruction. The storm train showed no sign of stopping. In Grazalema, Spain, 16 relentless hours of rain brought chaos, delivering in less than a day what Madrid receives in an entire year. The village, nestled in the mountains, was transformed almost overnight into a disaster zone, with streets turning into rivers and homes swallowed by the deluge. Residents, caught off guard by the sheer force of the storm, waded through knee-deep water, clutching what belongings they could carry. Families and business owners scrambled to evacuate as their homes and livelihoods were inundated, the water rising faster than anyone could have imagined. Authorities worked tirelessly to drain overflowing reservoirs, but the damage was already done. Security, memories, and livelihoods washed away in a matter of hours. The community faced not just physical loss, but the emotional toll of seeing their world upended. Meanwhile, in Portugal's Alcácer do Sal, the Sado River surged beyond its banks, submerging riverside neighborhoods. Emergency crews rushed to evacuate a nursing home, carrying elderly residents to safety as the water crept higher. Shopkeepers and families stood by helplessly, watching years of hard work and cherished memories disappear beneath thick mud and swirling debris. The devastation was swift and indiscriminate, leaving behind a trail of heartbreak. The Sado River, once a source of life and prosperity for the region, became an unstoppable force of destruction, reshaping the landscape and the lives of everyone in its path. These stories are not just statistics or headlines, they are the lived reality of thousands of people, each with their own struggles, hopes, and losses in the wake of disaster. The scars left by these storms, cracked walls, ruined possessions, and the lingering fear of what nature can unleash, will last long after the floodwaters recede. Grazalema and Alcacer do Sal now stand as stark reminders of the human cost of climate disaster and the resilience required to rebuild in its aftermath. Why are these storms so extreme? The answer is clear: a warming planet. Warmer air holds more moisture, fueling storms with unprecedented rainfall. Recent studies show Europe is experiencing rainfall levels predicted for decades in the future. Climate change is accelerating. Our infrastructure and planning are based on outdated projections, leaving us unprepared. Human-driven climate change, fueled by fossil fuels, is supercharging storms like Kristin and Leonardo. Changes in the jet stream are causing storms to stall or repeatedly hit the same regions. These floods aren't freak events, they're the predictable result of a world out of balance. The storms of 2026 are a warning. This is the new reality unless we act. Climate change is splitting Europe in two. Northern and Central Europe face wetter winters and rising river flood risks, with major rivers straining defenses. Areas once considered safe are now threatened by relentless rain. In contrast, Southern Europe faces a paradox: devastating floods within a broader trend of increasing drought. Hard, dry ground can't absorb sudden downpours, leading to flash floods. The South faces both immediate flood danger and long-term water scarcity, threatening agriculture and daily life. Meanwhile, the North must manage an overabundance of water. Both regions require a radical rethink of water management and urban planning. Europe's weather divide is creating two precarious futures. Europe's cities and towns are not built for today's climate. Flood defenses and drainage systems, designed for a different era, are overwhelmed by record-breaking storms. Urban sprawl has replaced absorbent land with concrete, channeling water straight into overloaded drains. Even upgraded defenses are proving inadequate as climate change accelerates. The old strategy, building higher walls and bigger drains, is failing. We need a new approach: more green spaces, restored floodplains, and accepting that some areas may be too vulnerable to defend. The floods of 2026 are forcing a reckoning with outdated infrastructure and planning. Resilience now means working with nature, not against it. The floods of 2026 are the latest in a series of escalating disasters, a stark reminder that Europe's relationship with water has always been fraught with risk. Streets that once bustled with daily life are now rivers, and entire communities have been forced to abandon their homes, watching helplessly as the waters rise higher each year. In 2024, flash floods in Valencia killed 237, shocking Spain and signaling a new era of extreme weather. The city's ancient streets, designed centuries ago, were no match for the torrents that swept through, leaving devastation in their wake. For many, it was a wake-up call that the climate crisis is not a distant threat, but a present danger. In 2021, floods in Germany and Belgium killed over 200, proving even wealthy nations are vulnerable. Entire towns were left in ruins, and families faced the heartbreaking task of rebuilding lives from the wreckage. The disaster exposed weaknesses in infrastructure and emergency planning, challenging the belief that prosperity alone could shield communities from nature's fury. Each disaster was called unprecedented, yet they're happening more often. Headlines repeat the same words, but the reality is that these so-called rare events are becoming the new normal. The frequency and intensity of floods are increasing, leaving less time for recovery between each catastrophe. These events are not isolated, they're part of a clear, worsening pattern linked to climate change. Scientists warn that rising temperatures are fueling heavier rains and more violent storms, while activists demand urgent action. The evidence is overwhelming. Europe's floods are symptoms of a planet in crisis. The lessons are painful but vital. Better preparation and a fundamental reassessment of flood risk are needed. Communities are learning to adapt, investing in stronger defenses and emergency plans, but the scale of the challenge is immense. Only by working together can we hope to protect lives and livelihoods from the next disaster. The history of Europe's floods is a warning we can no longer ignore. From black and white images of past evacuations to today's digital news feeds, the message is clear. The threat has always been there, but now it's growing. The storms of today are echoes of a chorus that's been growing for decades, each one louder than the last. As the clouds gather and the rain falls, Europe stands at a crossroads, between repeating the mistakes of the past or forging a safer, more resilient future. Across the Iberian Peninsula, the battle against the water is relentless. Emergency services rescue stranded residents, manage dams, and race to prevent further catastrophe. Communities show resilience, neighbors help each other, volunteers support evacuations, and business owners clear debris. Yet anxiety grows as meteorologists warn of the next storm, Marta, already forming over the Atlantic. The ground is saturated, every new drop adds to the crisis. The response is a race against time, recover, and reinforce before the next onslaught. The region braces for more, knowing the worst may still be ahead. Solidarity and urgency define the fight for survival. Amid crisis, a new conversation is emerging. We must rebuild differently. Cities are exploring sponge city designs, using green spaces and porous surfaces to absorb rain. Restoring natural floodplains gives rivers room to expand safely, reducing pressure on defenses. Farmers adapt with resilient crops. Homeowners flood-proof their properties. Public demand for climate action is rising, linking local disasters to global policy. The crisis is a catalyst for innovation and collaboration. Hope lies in learning from these storms, adapting, innovating, and building a safer, more sustainable future. The lessons of 2026 are written in water. If we heed them, we can create a world in better balance with nature.